The morning air over Winterfell lay heavy with the scent of damp wood smoke and melting snow, as though winter itself hesitated to release its grip on the north. Jon Snow stood beside Grey Wind's iron-barred pen, one hand lost in the direwolf's thick charcoal ruff, listening to the muffled bustle of a keep awakening to calamity. Robb had summoned every sworn lord remaining in the castle after receiving the raven from King's Landing. Lord Eddard Stark imprisoned on false charges, and the Lannisters tightening their mailed fist around the Iron Throne. The courtyard beyond the kennels throbbed with urgent life. Stable boys dashed between draft horses and saddled coursers. Grooms hurried to nail fresh iron shoes while sparks leapt into the half-light. Over it all rolled the rasp of whetstones against steel as men honed swords long kept for easier times. Jon felt each sound like a tug on some hidden thread binding him to this place, to these people. He had prepared himself for the wall, for cold beyond imagining and oaths whispered before a heart tree older than kingdoms. Yet here, on a dawn slick with fear, his blood yearned toward another path. Grey Wind's molten eyes fixed on him, feral and questioning, as if the beast sensed the storm of decision brewing in Jon's heart. He scratched behind a pointed ear, and acted as much for his own comfort as the wolf's, before stepping back, breath rising in pale plumes. A stable boy hurried past, nearly colliding with him, and offered a hasty apology. Jon muttered something forgiving, scarcely hearing the words. His mind churned with the memory of Snow Brothers, men in black, sworn to protect a realm that would never know their names, nor care. But Ghost, silent as snowfall, padded from the shadows and pressed a red-eyed gaze upon Jon's face. "Soon," Jon whispered to the pale direwolf, stroking the cold bright fur between his ears. He turned toward the great hall, boots crunching over frost-tipped straw, thoughts snagging on the old promises he had made to himself. That life at the wall would free him from the stain of bastardy, give him purpose beyond the shame that clung like burrs to a cloak. But father, no, Ned was prisoner in the south. Sansa and Arya were alone within the red keep with lions all around. Robb needed every sword arm loyal to Stark blood. Could Jon truly ride north while his family bled in the south? The great oak door loomed ahead, iron bands dark with age. He drew a slow breath and pushed inside. Robb stood before the raised dais, Lord Stark's high seat empty and cold as an unused helm. The boy Jon had roughed and wrestled in the yard was gone. In his place stood a young lord girded in mail, cloak of deep gray wool pinned at the shoulder with a silver direwolf. His hair was auburn flames under the guttering torches, and his mouth set in lines far older than his years. At Robb's right hand lingered Theon Greyjoy, sea-wind arrogance wrapped in fine Myrish silk. Tall and careless, Theon wore the grin of a man who believed the world was naught but pieces on his own Syvas board. Yet even he seemed subdued, a finger drumming the pommel of his dagger as though sounding the tides. The hall buzzed with hushed conversations, Meege Mormont growling counsel beside Halley's Hornwood, young Ser Wylis Manderly nodding gravely while his uncle Ser Donella Sharp of White Harbor outlined supply routes. Northern faces, each marked by frost and hardship, drawn together beneath the direwolf banners now unfurled from every rafter. Jon slipped in unnoticed until Grey Wind padded from the doorway behind him. The hall stilled as the direwolf bounded up the aisle, ebony teeth bared in a soundless snarl of greeting, then leaned against his master's knee. Robb's stern mask cracked for a heartbeat, a boyish relief, before he lifted his gaze and found Jon. "Brother," he called. The single word echoed, half forbidding, half petition. Jon approached the dais, Ghost ghosting at his heel. Awareness prickled along his skin. Stern eyes followed every step. The bastard of Winterfell, soon, perhaps, a brother of the Night's Watch, now intruding upon war council. He halted before Robb, and when the murmurs ceased, his voice emerged steady. "I would speak, if I may." Robb nodded. "Speak." Jon drew breath, tasting the smoke of distant hearths. "When father sent me to take the Black, it was his wish I serve the realm." He glanced across the gathered lords. "But circumstances have changed. I would not stand idle while he rots in a Lannister dungeon." His fists clenched. "Let me ride with you, Robb. I would wield my sword for House Stark. A silence fell, heavy as new snow. Somewhere a log popped in the hearth. Theon's brow arched with almost mocking surprise. Ser Helman Tallheart frowned as though weighing the bastard's value in measures of iron and oaths. Meage Mormont broke the hush first, her voice gravel rough. The wall needs men, she said. Yet blood draws blood. I've no love for vows that shackle good swords while Starks are caged. Robb's eyes glimmered with something unreadable. The Night's Watch binds men to duty, he said. I will not shame our father by unmaking his decision. Jon's heart hammered. Then I beg your leave to ask Lord Commander Mormont release me from my vow. Vows sworn, not yet taken. He swallowed. I have not spoken the words, only promised to speak them. The gathering buzzed anew. Theon stepped forward, smirk tugging his lip. If we make every decision by half-sworn oaths, we'll have chaos. Jon ignored him. He looked at Robb, meeting that fierce Tully blue stare. I am your brother as much as any here, lawful or not. Ghost will run at your side. My blade will answer your call. The unspoken hung between them. A lord had need of loyal men. A brother had need of family. And beyond all, a father had need of rescue. Robb's jaw worked. In that moment, Jon saw the weight of Winterfell's stones pressing upon his shoulders. At last Robb placed a hand on Grey Wind's shaggy neck and spoke. Very well, you will ride with us. His gaze swept the hall, daring challenge. Jon Snow is my brother. His place is here. A low murmur of assent rose, mingled with a few disapproving grunts. Yet no man voiced protest. The decision was sealed as surely as a letter with black wax. Relief flooded Jon, fierce and raw, but alongside it came a tremor of dread. He had severed himself from the wall, cast aside the certainty of purpose for the peril of war. He bowed his head. Thank you. Robb let out a breath. You leave at dawn, he said, voice softer. Arm yourself well, and say farewell to Bran. The name speared Jon with guilt. He had visited Bran's bedside nightly, recounting tales of the wall to an unmoving face. Had Bran heard? Would he waken to find both brothers gone? He turned away, steps echoing between the high pillars. Behind him, the council resumed in earnest, voices overlapping in a flurry of strategy. Jon felt as though he had leapt from one precipice only to find himself on a narrower ledge. Yet the blood in his veins surged with something bright and terrible, purpose tempered by love. The godswood embraced Winterfell's hidden heart, a living cathedral of red-leafed weirwoods and silent sentinel oaks. Jon pushed through the moss-laden gate beneath the watchful face of the heart tree, its bark carved into an expression both agonized and serene. Snow yet clung to shaded patches, bleeding into earth dark with thaw. Catelyn Stark sat at Bran's side upon a wooden bench, her copper hair strewn loose and wind-tossed. Bran lay swathed in furs atop a litter borne by Hodder, the gentle giant hovering nearby. The boy's eyelids fluttered, but still he dreamed. A dexterous crow hopped along a branch overhead, beak cocked as though eavesdropping on mortal grief. Lady Stark's gaze lifted at Jon's footfalls, eyes rimmed red. She said nothing, but her shoulders stiffened. Jon halted, uncertain. He had never found easy words with her. Bastardy built walls thicker than Winterfell's curtain stones. But time was short. I ride south with Robb, he said, voice hushed lest Bran stir. I wanted to. He swallowed the well of words and knelt beside the litter, sliding his glove across Bran's gloved hand. I'll come back, he promised the sleeping boy. And you'll ride too, faster than any of us. Ghost settled beside the litter, crimson eyes intent upon Bran's still face. Catelyn's breath hitched, a sound of hurt. My son needs peace, she whispered. He does not need more farewells. Jon straightened, meeting her gaze, letting the ache within speak through dark eyes. I never wished to leave him. Her features tightened. Resentment warred with weariness. And yet you go. For father. Jon's voice caught. For them all. Catelyn's spine softened, and something like reluctant acceptance flickered across her face. She reached to brush Bran's hair, fingers trembling. "Keep him safe," she said, meaning Robb. It was not a plea to Jon, yet it passed between them as fragile accord. He bowed his head, then turned, heart heavy with love's half-spoken. The heart tree watched, red sap tears glistening in silent benediction. Night fell swift that last evening in Winterfell. Under flickering torches, Jon carried a freshly oiled longsword, castle-forged steel, narrower than ice yet keen enough to whisper through air. Atop the battlements he found Samwell Tarly gazing out over snow-dappled roofs. Sam had arrived with Benjen Stark's last ranging, a prospective brother of the Watch who had begged one final night's respite in Winterfell before journeying on. He hugged himself against the chill. Jon joined him, ghost pressing warm against his calves. "You'll ride at first light," Sam said, not meeting his eyes. "And I'll ride north." His breath quivered. Jon nodded, resting forearms upon frost-rimmed stone. "The wall needs men of courage. You have more than you know." "Perhaps." Sam's breath fogged white. "But I fear courage is measured by deeds, not thoughts." Jon smiled, weary. "Then do deeds that scare you, and you'll measure up fine." He glanced southward. The stars shone diamond-hard over the dark line of the King's Road. "Write to me. Tell me of old bears, ravens, of the haunted forests. I'll write back tales of battle and heat enough to melt your quills."
Sam swallowed.
"Alive, then," he said softly. "Both of us." "Alive," Jon agreed, clasping the other's shoulder. "And brothers, watch or no." They stood in silence, twin outcasts bound by affection. Below, the courtyard gleamed with lanterns as men gathered beneath banners. The horns of war would sound with dawn. When sunrise bled crimson across the eastern sky, Jon rode through Winterfell's stone arch upon a dapple-gray gelding, ghost loping ahead like a pale omen. Around him trotted lords and levies, banners of the Merman of Manderley, the trident of House Tallheart, the roaring bear of Mormont rippling beside direwolves gray on white. Robb rode at the column's head, gray wind pacing on long legs. Snowmelt spattered beneath thousands of hooves. The King's Road stretched like a scar into rolling hills still frosted with winter's remnants. Jon breathed deep of the iron-sharp air. Behind lay childhood corridors. Ahead lay only uncertainty and steel. He cast one look back. Winterfell's towers jutted against the sky, distant chimneys trailing smoke. Bran slept within, and Rickon no doubt watched from a window, tiny fists gripping sill. Jon closed his eyes, tasting ash and resolve. The horns sounded. Horses surged forward. The North rode south to war, and Jon Snow rode beside his brother, oathless yet bound more surely than any vow could tether. The first days passed beneath low clouds, the wind carrying a wet chill that seeped beneath lamellar and boiled leather. Jon found himself riding near Robb more often than not, drawn by shared blood and tempered by years of training side by side in the yard. They spoke little. Words were rationed like firewood, for each knew the other's thoughts carried burdens enough. At night they camped among copses of white birch, tents clustered around roaring cookfires. Jon drilled with the foot levies, sparring until sweat froze upon his brow. The men eyed him, Stark by blood, Snow by name, but respect grew as his blade flicked and his footing held steady. One evening Great Jon Umber lumbered over, ale foam glistening in his beard, and clapped Jon's back so hard it near dashed him to the ground. "A bastard who swings true's worth 10 lordlings who swing pretty," he roared, laughter rumbling like thunder. Jon managed a grim smile beneath the blow's sting. Word spread of southern houses raising banners. Karstark and Serwyn had pledged their men, while ravens brought firebright news of Riverlands aflame under Lannister raids. Robb studied each parchment by firelight, lips taut, knuckles blanching. Jon watched silently. War had seemed a distant game once. They had played the night of the laughing tree beneath the broken tower, carved swords from pine. Now the game bled men. On the 8th night, as the host neared Moat Cailin, Jon found Robb pacing outside his tent. Dew silvered his boots. Gray wind prowled at the perimeter, restless. Torches fluttered. "Can't sleep?" Jon asked. Robb shook his head. Every raven brings worse tidings. Lord Tywin Lannister's forces burn the Riverlands. They say Riverrun is besieged. His voice cracked on the word siege, as though disbelieving such doom could claim his mother's kin. And father, he looked away. Jon placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. We'll free him, Robb exhaled. We ride at dawn for Moat Cailin. Theon boasts it can withstand any assault, but I'd rather pass swiftly. He rubbed his eyes. If I falter, you won't. Jon's grip tightened. You bear more than your own hope. Lean, but do not break. Robb's mouth quirked into a tired grin. You sound like Maester Luwin. Then perhaps he haunts me. Jon forced a smile. Go, rest. Tomorrow demands a clear head. Robb nodded. Thank you, brother. He vanished into the tent, shadows swallowing him. Jon watched gray wind circle once, then settle, yellow eyes reflecting torch glow. Ghost emerged, silent snowfall incarnate, and the two direwolves regarded one another. A mirror of living shadow and bone-white moon. Jon wondered what speech passed between them. He turned skyward. The stars shone distant, unblinking. Somewhere beyond that black canvas, the wall loomed, blue as frozen tears. He felt its pull still, a reminder of promises half-kept. Yet another vow rose within him now. To guard Robb's flank, to wield justice, to carve a path through fear. He breathed, and the night breathed with him. Moat Cailin sprawled across the neck of Westeros like a shattered crown, slimy green-black stones jutting from fetid bogs. Once a fortress to awe kings, now it lay in ruin, towers eroded by centuries of harsh wind and salt mire. Yet its position, straddling the only causeway through the marshlands, made it a dagger poised at any army venturing south from the north. By first light, the vanguard reached the outskirts, and Robb ordered scouts to survey. Jon rode with gray wind at his side, studying moss-coated walls pitted with holes wide enough to pass a boar. Reeds rustled as unseen things slithered beneath brackish pools. The air stank of decay. The Ironborn occupied 3 towers, their black sails trimmed in sea green. Theon, bitter pride simmering, offered to negotiate passage. Robb hesitated, weighing friendship against prudence. Finally, he allowed Theon and 7 men to parley under white flag. Jon waited atop a rise beside Robb, snowflakes drifting though the sky bore spring's promise. Towers loomed like rotted teeth. Below, Theon's party waded knee-deep through sludge toward a sagging gate. They vanished inside. Hours passed. Distant cries echoed, then silence. Robb's jaw set. If he's betrayed me, he muttered, but Jon heard the sting of fear beneath the frost. At dusk, Theon emerged, grin bright as gold. A black iron key swung from his hand. The towers yield, he called. A gift from Captain Kerwin of the Stony Shore, on behalf of Prince Balon's blood. Robb's eyes narrowed. Your father rebels even now, if rumor be true. I am my own man, Theon replied, smile faltering only slightly. And I give you Moat Cailin. That night, Robb's host crossed the causeway unmolested. Fires dotted the horizon as camp was made on firmer ground south of the bogs. Jon sat with the Tallhearts, sharing oatcakes soaked in grease, listening to talk of Tully banners and Frey crossings at the Twins. War moved on many fronts. Renly Baratheon's green roses southward, Stannis' red heart eastward. Lions at Riverrun, wolves descending from winter. He excused himself early and found Ghost standing sentinel at the edge of torchlight, hackles raised. In the gloom, gray wind paced, ears twitching toward distant nothing. Jon followed their attention and glimpsed 2 glowing eyes among reeds. No direwolf, but a weasel or fox perhaps. Yet a chill lanced his spine. This was no ordinary night. Somewhere beyond the dark, the world shifted. Days blurred into leagues. The North's banners streamed south along the King's Road, through land that turned greener, fields dotted with crocus and violet. Each village they passed greeted them with guarded stares. Fear of Lannister reprisal etched into weathered faces. Robb ordered coin paid for provisions, grain stores protected, no man to take more than fair. The bastards of Bolton grumbled. Great John barked compliance. One noon they reached the trident of a narrow stream where men once clashed in Robert's rebellion. John paused, studying the water glistening like steel. He thought of father's stories, of Rieger's rubies, of Darren's broken helm. War had many ghosts. Across the ford, ravens awaited with sealed missives. Robb read the first and paled. They've executed Ser Vance at Derry. Lannister banner seized the castle. He crushed the parchment. Every mile we delay costs lives. He sent riders to harry the flanks, ordered forced marches. John pitted the foot levies, boots worn thin, yet none voiced complaint. Winterfell bred endurance in bone. That night John sat by candlelight, sharpening Longclaw's edge, a castle-forged blade gifted by Robb from the armory. He traced the fuller's length, reflecting on each pass of stone. Will this steel taste lion blood? He wondered, and felt no thrill, only gravity. Outside, men sang low songs of the north, verses of the ice dragon, of Brandon the builder, of the last hearth's warmth. The melody carried over tents and guttering torches. John closed his eyes, letting it seep into marrow. Yet an image haunted him. A stooped old man clinging to a weirwood-carved throne, ravens cawing overhead, black cloaks billowing. He had spurned the wall. Would the gods forgive such severance? Ghost padded in, head low, and pressed against John's knee. In those red eyes John saw neither condemnation nor comfort, only unwavering presence. He set the whetstone down and rested his hand on the direwolf's skull. "We stand together," he murmured, "whatever comes." The Green Fork Valley unfolded like a war board of endless squares. Wheat fields, low hedgerows, stone walls. Scouts returned with word of Lannister outriders, small bands testing the wolf's bite. Robb deployed Meage Mormont's riders to counter, trusting their island-born ferocity. John accompanied the detachment, learning the rhythm of skirmish, how to read dust clouds for cavalry, scan treelines for crossbow glints. The first blood he drew came swift and ugly. A Lannister scout lunging with spear, eyes wide behind rusted helm. Longclaw met the thrust, swept aside, then pierced mail between ribs. John felt the blade grate bone, hot spill across his glove. The man gasped a curse, sagged. John wrenched steel free. He wanted to kneel, to speak some benediction, but battle gave no pause. Another came screaming, cut down by Meage herself. When the clash ended, bodies lay strewn amid crushed barley. The wind carried iron tang. John wiped his sword on grass, heart slamming. He searched himself for triumph and found only trembling. Gray wind snarled at crows descending. That eve, Robb evaluated maps by firelight. John stood at his elbow, silent. "We must strike Ser Stafford's camp near the Twins," Robb said, finger-tapping parchment. "But Lord Walder holds the crossings like a miser grips coins." "They say Walder loves cunning bargains," John offered. Robb's mouth twisted. "Aye, he will ask for much." He scooped a carved wolf token and placed it over the drawn bridge. Still, time presses. Their eyes met, and John felt the subtle current of trust. Robb leaned closer, voice low. "You counsel me as father would." John shook his head. "I only speak what I think true. That is why I listen." Something warm kindled in John's chest, recognition beyond blood. The beginnings of command shared. He nodded, unsure how to answer, and stepped back. The host reached the Twins beneath skies bruised with storm. Massive towers rose on either bank of the Green Fork, linked by long-arched bridge lined with arrow slits. Banners painted with a silver trout entwined by two blue towers snapped in wind. Robb's envoy rode ahead, Ser Perwyn Frey under peace banner. John watched from the main column as minutes stretched into hours. Rain began to fall, pattering on helms and shields. At last the portcullis creaked open, and Lord Walder's answer arrived. A parchment thick with demands. Betrothals, wards, hostages, silver. Robb's jaw tightened till knuckles whitened, yet he read each line aloud to the council. John listened. Marriage to a Frey daughter. Pages fostered. A seat at court. At length Robb folded the letter. I will consider. The council dissolved into grumbling debate beneath hastily erected awnings. Jon stood beside Theon, who shook his head. Old Lord Walder doesn't treat with wolves. He merely fattens himself on their bones. He spat. We should storm the bridge. Hundreds would die, Jon said. And more will die while we haggle. Theon glared at sullen clouds. Your brother's caution will bleed us dry. Jon ignored the bait. He strode through drizzle toward Robb's tent. Inside, the young lord sat alone, letter laid across his lap. Gray wind curled at his feet. The direwolf's hackles lifted when Jon entered, but Robb raised a staying hand. I'll agree, Robb said quietly. Daughters and all. Jon seated himself upon a camp stool. It buys us passage. Yet part of me wonders if father would. He rubbed weary eyes. I fear I barter more lives than any victory may save. Jon considered. Father believed in keeping faith with allies, even loathsome ones, if doing so spared the small folk. Robb blew out a slow breath. That must suffice then. He pushed the letter aside. I will need men I can trust across every flank. I want you with the outriders when we cross. They've seen your sword work. Jon inclined his head. You have my blade. And your counsel. Robb met his gaze, earnest. Do not hold back truth even when it cuts. Truth is a blade of its own, Jon said, echoing Maester Luwin. They shared a faint smile, the rare warmth of brothers amid gathering shadows. At dawn trumpets rang. The drawbridge lowered, shuddering against stone. Robb led the first column through, banners trailing wetly behind. Jon rode among the outriders, scanning arrow loops high above. Frey men watched, spears braced, expressions unreadable. The trip across spanned a lifetime, yet eventually horses clattered out onto southern bank, and Jon exhaled relief he did not realize he held. Beyond the twins sprawled the Riverlands, rolling plains scarred by smoke plumes marking Lannister camps. Scouts reported Ser Jaime's host advancing along the Red Fork toward Riverrun, intent on crushing Lord Edmure's forces. Robb unfurled his plan. Strike Jaime's flank before he could finish the siege. The army marched day and night, torches snaking over hills like fireflies trapped in glass. Jon slept in snatches, haunted by vicious dreams. A golden lion twisting on a spear, ravens pecking a crowned skull, the wall cracking like an egg to spill darkness. He woke shivering, ghost pressed against his chest, though the nights grew warmer with each league south. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in bruised lavender, Jon overheard riders whisper of Stannis Baratheon's fleet sailing from Dragonstone. The realm fractured like thin ice. He felt the tremor of destiny beneath each event, threads weaving an unseen tapestry, the bastard of Winterfell now a single strand tugged into war's loom. At the edge of Whispering Wood, Robb arrayed his forces. Scouts had located Jaime Lannister's vanguard encamped beyond a meandering stream. Tallhorn's men circled to sever escape, Mormont's riders poised to charge through forest gloom. Jon, placed with the outrider screen, awaited the horn. Dusk deepened into black, only firefly embers drifting among trees. Gray wind prowled ahead, ghost silent, ghost mirrored from opposite flank. Jon's heart pounded. He tightened his grip on Longclaw, recalling each drill, each parry, each promise. The world seemed to hold its breath. A horn blared. Wolves howled. Robb's infantry surged from shadow, crashing into lion lines. Steel rang like church bells. Horses screamed. Jon spurred forward, barking orders, outriders swarming Lannister scouts in the rear. He met a pikeman head-on. Longclaw glimmered, cleaving through wooden shaft, slicing flesh. Blood spattered his face, hot amid night's cool. He pressed on, blocking, thrusting, moving with the hurricane rhythm of battle. Ghost leapt upon a crossbowman, fangs ripping. Gray wind barreled through mounted knights, crimson slathering his muzzle. The forest echoed with chaos. Jon's arm burned, muscles aflame, yet he fought on. A knight in gilded half-plate swung a morning star, a blur of spiked iron. Jon ducked, felt wind graze hair. His riposte slid under the visor and the knight crumpled. Another came, spear forward. Jon stepped inside, drove pommel to throat, blade up through mail. Time blurred, then horns again, 2 blasts. Jon turned to see golden banners collapsing. In their midst, Jaime Lannister himself slashed a desperate arc, crimson cloak torn. Robb charged on horseback, gray wind bounding. Jon could only watch as the 2 commanders clashed. Jaime's sword dancing, Robb's determination unyielding. The wolf bit deep. Jaime parried, backpedaled. Suddenly Great Jon and Tallheart's men swarmed. Overwhelming. Cry rang. Kingslayers taken. Jon sagged, sword dropping, breath ragged. Around him, the forest rang with wolf victory. Flames licked abandoned lion tents, sending sparks into heaven. He sank to a knee, Ghost pressing a comforting flank. The night hummed with distant weeping and triumphant roars. Yet beneath it, Jon felt a different shiver. The turning of some great wheel, grinding toward unknown future. 2 days later, the captive Jaime Lannister knelt in a pavilion bound in chains of dulled iron. Robb questioned him with measured words, honor battling wrath. Jon watched quietly outside. He saw no glory in humbling a man, only necessity. When the questioning ended, Robb emerged. Sunset cast gold upon his drawn face. Jon approached. "It's done," Robb said, voice hoarse. "Jaime will ride to Riverrun under heavy guard. We march for the Crag tomorrow." Jon nodded. "You did what you must." Robb studied him. "And you, brother? Did you doubt?" Jon met his gaze. "Never." Pause. Robb gripped Jon's forearm, calluses rasping. "You saved many lives in that charge," he said low. "I saw you guide men through chaos. I would name you first ranger of my outriders, if you'll take it." Jon swallowed. "Such honor for a snow." "I will. Then serve me faithfully, as you always have," Robb murmured. Jon squeezed back. "Until my last breath." They parted, but Jon felt the weight of that oath settle deeper than any he once meant to speak at the wall. He had chosen path under open sky, forged by war, tempered by love. Night deepened. Jon wandered beyond camp until torches faded to amber specks. He stood alone beneath swaying pines, the scent of crushed needles mingling with distant wood smoke. Stars glittered, cold and eternal. Ghost padded near, head raised to sniff wind. Jon knelt, removing a leather pouch from his belt. Within lay a small carved wooden shield, Bran's last gift before the fall, painted with a dire wolf chasing the sun. Jon turned it in his fingers, tracing faded lines. "I will see you again," he whispered to invisible siblings, to father in chains, to sisters under lion claws. "And when I do, I'll set things right." The forest answered with a sigh of night breeze. Somewhere an owl hooted. Ghost nuzzled his arm. Jon smiled and stood, slipping the token away. He strode back toward camp, direwolf at heel, steps steady despite exhaustion. Ahead lay rivers still to cross, keeps to besiege, alliances to forge. The south beckoned with fire and treachery, and hope. Jon Snow, once bound for black cloaks and frozen stones, now carved his own saga upon the green realms of men, brother beside brother. And in the quiet between breaths, he felt the world watch, waiting to unfold. Robb Stark's host lingered 3 nights amid the charred husks of lion tents, gathering the wounded and burning the dead, while outriders fanned across the whispering wood to scour for stragglers. Green spring light sifted through half-leafed branches, exposing every splash of bright blood on moss. Yet Jon Snow felt as though a hush had settled over the forest, an expectant pause in the world's breath that warned no triumph endured unchallenged. He rose before first light each morning to patrol the perimeter with gray wind and Ghost loping ahead, their twin shapes, one shadow dark, one snow pale, sliding beneath boughs like living omens. Even the ravens seemed to keep their distance, cawing only from the highest branches as though wary of ghosts prowling below. The captains met nightly beneath the largest pavilion, a spare bronze brazier glowing at the center. Canvas walls billowed with damp wind, carrying the mingled smells of pitch and wet pine. There Robb spread his war table, a rough plank balanced across 2 barrels, Riverlands carved in charcoal strokes, small painted tokens, trout for Tully levies, direwolves for northern holds, scrawled golden lions to mark enemy spears. Moved as arguments rose and voices sharpened, Jon stood at Robb's shoulder each council, listening and watching and gauging which lords stiffened at bold suggestions, which nodded eager for blood. Though titled only First Ranger of the Outriders, he quickly learned that battlefield vision mattered as deeply as lineage. Men of twice his years often fell silent when Robb asked, "What say you, Snow?" Yet the boldest counsel that first week did not come from any Umber or Karstark. Instead, Mage Mormont, the short, square-built lady of Bear Island, jabbed a mail-clad finger at the crude map and growled, "Split the host. Leave trim spear companies to shadow the Kingslayer's routed rear while you ride hard for Riverrun with your main strength. Ser Jaime's loss is a wound. Drive the blade deeper before the lion licks it clean." Her words struck the gathering like hammer blows on shield rims. Some lords bristled. Old Ser Harrion Karstark muttered of honor in single battle lines. But Robb's blue eyes flared with something like gratitude. He glanced once at Jon, saw tacit approval in his brother's nod, and answered Mormont with a sharp eye. They marched before dawn the next day, rain sluicing through trees to turn the forest floor into black mulch. Jon led the vanguard scouts on a looping eastern run, tasked to sniff out ambush or retreat. Longclaw rode naked across his lap, its pale rippled blade catching brief gleams where early sun pierced cloud. Each sense sharpened to the prestige of battle. How bird calls shifted, how rabbit trails twisted, how distant river scent thickened in low gullies. In that keening hush Jon felt Ghost's mind brush his own. A skitter of instinct, raw and feral, warning of unfamiliar scents. They found 2 lion survivors before noon, ragged archers skulking beneath a fallen oak, cheeks hollow with hunger. Jon dismounted without a word, directed his riders to encircle, and approached alone, cloak dripping. He promised bread for surrender and steel for resistance. One man threw down his bow at once. The other loosed a wild shot that missed by an arm's width. Ghost hit him an instant later, silent as snowfall, and when Jon knelt to close the man's eyes afterward, he found the arrow had split, notched from haste. He left the prisoner bound for Robb's rear guard and pressed on, each thunder of hooves singing cold through his bones. By dusk of the 4th day, they broke from woodland onto rolling fields smudged violet beneath storm clouds. In the west glimmered Riverrun's triple-walled island keep, banners of leaping trout snapping high against the gloom. But between the stark host and that sanctuary sprawled a swathe of muddy earth gouged by trenches, palisades, and the smoking remains of hamlets. The siege works of Ser Stafford's reinforcement army clutching River rode like a gauntlet. Fires dotted the horizon, glowering eyes behind makeshift walls. Jon drew his mount alongside Robb's at a low ridge, the 2 brothers surveying the lion's lines through slanting rain. A night attack? Robb mused. Better a dusk diversion, Jon said quietly, studying how rain pooled in low trenches. Send Mage and her daughters to harry the western palisade while our outriders swing wide and cut the rear horse pens. When Stafford wheels to repel her, we punch through the center with foot and pikes. One hard hammerfall before he orders torches lit. Robb's mouth tugged at one corner, half smile notched with fatigue. You relish shadow more than snow these days, brother. Shadow keeps a man alive when daylight offers only arrows, Jon answered, though he felt the remark like a distant echo, remembering his childhood dream of the Wall, a life defined by white days and darker nights that hid nothing because cold stripped the world bare. War twisted all illusions. Here in the Riverlands, shadow had become his ally. Orders flew. Drums thundered through gathering dark. Banners dipped. Torches were deliberately quenched. Jon's riders melted into the mist, mouths wrapped in cloth to hide breath. Rain thickened, drumming on helms. He kept Ghost at his knee but sent the direwolf forward in a low loping arc to scout the air with nostrils flared, crimson eyes winking in and out of gloom. Now and again gray wind's deeper growl rolled from Robb's position behind, direwolves speaking across the open night like primal horns. The sound set every northerner's hair on end and sent more than one Green Lion soldier skittering from their post before the attack even fell. When Miege Mormont's first war cry broke the stillness, it echoed like a bear's roar tearing free from stone. Torches flared in the western siege line as startled catapults hurled stones blind into rain. At that same instant, Jon's outriders burst from the east, galloping hard for the horse lines. Thin canvas shelters collapsed beneath flashing blades, hobbled destriers shrieked and reared, and panicked grooms dashed screaming into mud. He drove Longclaw through a stablemaster's collarbone, dismounting to cut the hobbles of captured northern steeds. The animals bolted into the storm, churning up darkness. Chaos unseated Stafford's order before it could form. Through the turmoil, Jon glimpsed the main Stark banners advancing. Karstark Sunburst, Umber Giant, Tallheart Pines, marching tight ranks across the open rise while catapult stones whistled overhead to burst like dark suns in sodden pasture. Trumpets blared. Then the center erupted. Robb's mailed foot slammed a breach through half-man stakes, bearing long pikes over tower shields, the sound a rolling drumbeat of iron on iron. Men floundered over their own palisade logs, spears glancing off shield rims slick with rain. Gray wind bounded the rampart in 2 strides and tore a sergeant from ladder rungs. The scream vanished into thunder. Jon lost all sense of time, hacking and shoving through narrow lanes between tents while Ghost carved parallel arcs white bright and bloody. He remembered only fragments, driving his shoulder into a knight's chest to force him under surging hooves, seeing a tall Frey, Ser Stevrin perhaps, stumble with an arrow in thigh, reaching out wordless until Jon lifted him behind a bale of sodden straw, feeling the hot kick of crossbow quarrel graze his greave and thud into a barley sack. In less than an hour, the siege lines unraveled. Lion troops fled west toward the Red Fork, abandoning supply wagons still aflame. Great Jon Umber thundered laughter as he pursued, but Robb recalled him with a single bark. No time for slaughter, not with Riverrun's gates so near. Jon gathered his outriders, rallying on a low hummock where a broken war standard lay trampled. Rain eased to a whisper. Far across the field, Riverrun's drawbridge rattled down. Between crenellations, Jon saw shapes waving, shielding torch flames with mail-clad hands. A shrill trumpet pealed welcome. They entered the stronghold before midnight, exhausted, mud-sodden, but alive and breathing the scent of victory. Jon dismounted within Riverrun's outer ward and nearly buckled when his boots met stone. A stable hand whisked his gelding away. Another reached to take Longclaw, but Jon shook his head, slinging the blade across his back. Some habits of battle proved hard to set aside. He followed Robb across dripping drawstones beneath banners that streamed silver blue and gray. Ser Edmure met them in the rain-polished courtyard, eyes red with unslept nights, yet fierce pride riding his shoulders as he clasped his nephew's arms. "Your father would have ridden with you at the van," Edmure rasped, voice hoarse from shouting commands over wall parapets. "He'll be thrice proud when you carry these colors to King's Landing." Robb bowed his head at the mention of Ned Stark, imprisoned still, and a hush slicked across the courtyard. Jon saw Caitlin Stark then, striding from the keep steps, cloak fanned like a river gull's wing. Her face was drawn fine as parchment, but her eyes glowed with tears unshed when she beheld Robb. Mother and son embraced while rain hammered stone. Jon turned aside to give them moment, yet his gaze snagged on the slender form of Brynden Blackfish Tully descending behind her. His river cloak drenched, a white streak in his beard. The old knight halted before Jon and nodded once. "Snow," he greeted, hard voice warmed by respect. "I hear you ride the wind as keenly as any wolf of the pack." Jon inclined his head. "Only trying to keep up with the dire wolves, sir." The Blackfish's smile was wry. "If half these river lords had such modesty, we might win this war without drawing another blade." Inside the great hall fires roared, goblets passed, but the celebration rang hollow beneath grim tidings brought by ravens perched in Riverrun's rookery. Lord Tywin massing near Harrenhal, Stannis and Renly in open feud at Storm's End, and worst, a sealed parchment bearing the hand seal, but written in quavering script. A jailer's surreptitious note reporting Ned Stark gravely ill after an unfor. Tunate accident on the steps of Baylor's September. John watched Robb's knuckles blanch white as he read, throat bobbing once, but steel lay behind his eyes when he lifted his gaze again. "We ride at dawn," he said to no one and everyone. "Father does not have time for our rest." Not all welcomed such haste. Ser Edmure argued the need to repair Riverrun's damage. Highborn lords fretted over supply trains stretched thin. Yet Cailin spoke only once, voice clear as water over stone. "Every day we delay is another day the Lannisters tighten the noose." No one could dispute a mother newly reunited with her son. That night, John bedded in a barack loft above the kennels. Rain drummed the wooden shingles overhead, the warm animal smell of straw and hounds strangely comforting after weeks among pines and mud. He could not sleep. Instead he sat cross-legged, cleaning Longclaw with slow strokes of oiled cloth while Ghost curled at his back. Around midnight footsteps creaked on the ladder. Robb emerged, hair damp, cheeks shadowed with candle glow. "Couldn't close my eyes," Robb admitted, settling opposite him. "We ride too soon," John said quietly. "I know," Robb rubbed tired temples. "But Father's life weighs heavier than any host." John resheathed Longclaw and leaned against a beam. "We may reach the Crag within a fortnight if we press. But word from the wall travels slower. The old bear will send scouts south soon, perhaps even riders to treat with you." Robb's brow lifted. "The wall? You still dream of it?" "Some nights," John confessed. "I left half a life behind, but another half formed here." He gestured toward gray wind's distant howl echoing through night. "I wonder if we can ever be whole." Robb regarded him long. "War splits more souls than it spares. Yet when it's over, the pieces may fit into shapes we never imagined." He managed a weary smile. "When peace comes, brother, we'll build what we need." "Peace," John echoed, tasting the word like rare wine. They spoke then of smaller things, of Bran's stirring fingers, of Arya's wild lessons with Needle, of Rickon's tantrums, and though each memory carried its ache, together they formed a fragile bridge across the yawning dark. When Robb finally departed, Ghost curled tighter and sleep found John, deep and dreamless. He woke before dawn to horns and clattering harness, the army stirring like a giant roused. Riverrun's courtyard churned with carts and banners. John strapped on boiled leather, checked his saddle girths, and swung astride the gray gelding. Ghost bounded ahead. Gray wind swept past like shadowed wind. The gates ground open to reveal a sky washed clean by departing storm, fragile blue bruising pink at the eastern rim. They rode southeast along the red fork under low sun. Spring unclenched around them, orchards budding white, meadows stippled with buttercups. Yet smoke stained the horizon wherever smaller hamlets lay. The Lannisters retreated, but not quietly. Every hearth they could not hold they burned. Jon's outriders found charred corpses nailed to an indoor, women and children stacked beneath. He forced himself to walk each yard of ruin, memorizing faces even as the stench turned his stomach. Vengeance whispered through the army like wildfire through dry grass. 3 days past Riverrun, they reached a village called Wayfarer's Rest, its small timber palisade miraculously intact. The villagers poured out weeping as stark banners crested the rise. Robb granted them safe quarter and posted guards. That evening a tattered Septon requested audience. Jon escorted the old man, white beard spattered with ash, to Robb's fire. There the Septon unrolled a soot-stained parchment. Amnesty terms from Lord Tywin for any river lord who bent the knee. Robb read in silence, then ripped the paper and fed the fragments to the flames. The old Septon bowed, tears glimmering. Jon escorted him back, placing a loaf of black bread in his arms. Angels of mercy seemed in short supply. Any crumb thrown might yet seed hope. Jon's outriders ranged wider daily, for lion cavalry prowled the margins. Small detachments striking at baggage trains, stealing horses, vanishing before pursuit. One damp morning before sunrise, Ghost returned with fur bristling, muzzle speckled red. Jon followed the direwolf's trail to a hollow where 3 Lannister scouts lay dead, throats torn. He found parchments in their saddlebags. maps inked with stark black lines to Renly's encampment in the south. Jon carried them back to Robb at once. Studying the lines, Robb's brows knit. "If Renly and Stannis break pact," he murmured, "the realm may fracture beyond repair." That noon Robb summoned Lady Cailin, Ser Brynden, Jon, and the Great Jon for counsel. Within a canvas command tent they debated roads forked and roads yet unseen. The fang that bit deepest. Cailin proposed riding to treat with Renly herself, carrying an offer of alliance sealed by Ned Stark's blood and Robb's honor. Robb resisted, fearing for her safety. But Caitlin's gaze flamed as she spoke of how Ned had once carried Robert Baratheon's promise to Riverrun. "He rode when hope seemed folly," she said, "and I must ride now." In the end Robb yielded, though the decision weighed heavy. Cailin embraced Jon quietly afterward, surprising him with the firmness of her grip. "Guard my son," she whispered. "He may command an army, but his heart is still a boy's." With Caitlin's departure south, the host pressed eastward for the Crag, seat of the Westerling family rumored to shelter fresh lion levies. The road wound through hills of green slate and gorse. Rains returned, relentless thin sheets that turned cart tracks into ruts knee-deep. Jon spent long hours in saddle, slick cloak plastered to mail. Nights he half slept in damp furs, half listened to the wheezing cough of a youth from White Harbor dying of swamp fever in the tent next over. War did not wait for healers. One mist-choked dusk Jon rode point on a narrow defile, stone cliffs jagged on both sides. He tasted danger in the silence. Birds absent, even the wind reluctant. He reined in, hand raised. Ghost froze, ears flattened. A heartbeat later, arrows hissed. The first thudded into Jon's cloak but failed to pierce mail. Two more clattered off the cliff. He bellowed warning, ducking beneath his gelding's neck as riders behind scattered for cover. From above, shadowed shapes loosed a second volley. Jon spurred forward, racing beneath overhang until the path widened. He leapt from saddle, hot blood pounding his ears, scanning crests for movement. Gray winds answering howl erupted further back as Robb's vanguard surged to relieve. Cut off and outnumbered, the ambushers attempted retreat up hidden goat tracks. Jon sprinted after the nearest archer, legs slapping mud. The man scrambled over wet rock, but Ghost sprang, jaws fastening to calf, dragging him screaming onto narrow ledge. Jon pressed sword tip to throat. "Name your captain," he demanded. Terror glazed the archer's eyes. "Ser Cleos, the Crakehall dog," he babbled. Jon bound him, then scaled higher ledges, driving two more attackers into Robb's waiting spears below. The skirmish left 5 Starks wounded, 2 dead. They buried the northern men at the foot of the cliff, cairns piled of shale slick with rain. Jon knelt to place the men's helms atop stones, whispering a prayer he dredged from old Septa Mordane's lessons. Mother's mercy to those who keep the watch. It felt feeble, but words were all he had besides steel. As they neared the crag, lion resistance stiffened. Scout fires flickered on distant ridges at night like watchful eyes. Robb ordered silent marches. No horns, no campfires once darkness fell. Men ate cold salt beef, drank river water without boiling. Morale sagged under relentless damp and fear of unseen blades. Jon spoke with each outrider troop nightly, offering small jests, sharing dried apple strips he'd saved since Riverrun. Small acts mattered when war drained color from the world. One moonless eve, a scout hastened in whisper quiet. A company of Westerling light horse camped by an abandoned mill, 2 leagues north, unaware of Stark proximity. Jon requested leave to lead a strike. Robb agreed on condition he take only 30 men, enough for speed without costly risk. They rode beneath cloak of darkness, mouths wrapped, hoofs padded with rags. Ghost ranged ahead, visible only when starlight kissed white fur. Close to midnight the mill loomed. Sagging water wheel, roof half collapsed. Ember glow pulsed within. Jon dismounted his men 50 paces from camp and signaled the wolf leap. Ghost vanished. Jon crept with 6 archers upwind. Bows knocked. At his whistle they loosed into the flicker of torchlight, black fletching hissing. Chaos erupted. Westerlings scrambling for saddles, half-armored. Jon's foot swept into camp from the south, steel flashing. He targeted the picket line first, slashing hobbles, spooking steeds. Horses bolted, colliding with tents. Amid the panic, Jon sought the captain's plume, a silver brooch on dark surcoat. He closed, parried a desperate swing, and drove pommel into the man's jaw. The captain collapsed without sound. Within minutes, resistance broke. One Stark died, arrow through eye. For Westerlings surrendered. The rest lay dead or fled into night. They found sealed messages in the captain's satchel, orders from Harrenhal to rendezvous with Ser Gregor Clegane along the Tumblestone. Jon delivered the papers to Robb at dawn. His brother's satisfaction flickered only briefly before shadow returned. Every victory merely postponed the hour of reckoning with Tywin's main host. Still, Robb clasped Jon's forearm. "You run the vanguard like a true wolf," he said. "Father will hear of this." Jon ducked his head, uneasy with praise. "Battle teaches only today. Tomorrow's fangs may bite deeper." Robb's answering smile held a trace of Ned Stark's quiet sorrow. "Then we sharpen our own." They reached the Crag 6 days later, looming atop jagged red cliffs like a stone hawk judging prey. Lion banners flew alongside Westerling white. Robb arrayed his men in 3 wedges across the valley. Trebuchets hewn from felled oak assembled under direction of Lord Karstark's engineers. Jon's outriders harried the curtain walls nightly, firing flaming arrows, cutting supply wagons attempting to slip through back trails. After 4 days of siege, the Westerlings sued for terms, wary of Stark steel yet fearful of Tywin's wrath should they yield completely. Robb demanded all grain stores, 60 hostages for good faith, and the surrender of 20 Lannister knights quartered within. The Westerlings balked, bargaining for lesser tribute. Negotiations stretched, anchored by stalemate. During this lull, a raven fluttered into camp bearing a black ribbon, the mark of the Night's Watch. Jon's heart clenched as he recognized Jeor Mormont's slanted hand across the parchment. News of wildling stirrings beyond the wall, of Benjen Stark still missing, of a rumor older than kingdoms. Dead men walking in cold shadows. The old bear, unaware of Jon's desertion, begged aid. "Any riders you can spare south, send north instead. The realm's true enemy stirs." Jon read the letter by firelight, rain pattering on his cuirass, and felt something fracture quietly inside. Duty, he had once believed, stood clear as sunrise. Take the black, guard the realms of men. But he had chosen blood over vow, father over stranger. Now his abandoned pledge called out across leagues, its echo sharpened by fear. He folded the parchment slow and deliberate, as though it might cut skin, and carried it to Robb's tent. Robb absorbed the news in silence, thumb brushing wolf-head maptacks. "If this is true." "It is true," Jon said. Benjen's letters spoke of queer tracks, lost patrols. Something ancient moves. The wall may need men sooner than we dreamed. Robb's jaw worked. Yet father is caged in King's Landing. I cannot split the host again, not with Tywin massing. "You can send riders," Jon pressed. "Volunteers without rank. A score might mean a fortress held." Robb's eyes lingered on gray wind curled at tent flap. "Would you lead them?" The question sliced deeper than blade. Jon looked to the partially furled map of the Crownlands, to the delicate string marking their intended march southward, and then to the letter heavy in his palm. Snowflakes of doubt drifted through his mind. "I swore myself to your side," he said at last. "I will not abandon you. But the Watch is your other family." Robb's voice softened. "If your heart rides north, brother, I will not chain it south." Jon swallowed, tasting ash. "My heart rides 2 roads." He turned away, staring at flame shadows dancing across canvas. "If I leave now, I betray father. If I stay, perhaps whole kingdoms burn when the wall falls." He pressed heel of palm to brow. "How do I choose between blood and ice?" Robb stepped forward, laying a hand on Jon's shoulder, iron to bowstring. "We are Starks," he murmured. "We hold fast to choices others flee. Whatever road you ride, You ride with my blessing." The words soothed nothing but steadied everything. Jon exhaled, voice thin. "Give me the night to decide." He left the pavilion and wandered beyond camp, ghosting past perimeter guards into silent woodland. Ghost trotted at heel, occasionally darting ahead to nose under ferns. Above, a pale moon broke cloud, silvering wet leaves. Jon halted beside a brook, kneeling to drink the icy water, feeling it cut clean down his throat. He lifted his face to the moon and remembered the heart tree in Winterfell's Godswood, the red leaves whispering secrets only those who listened with steadfast hearts might hear. He closed his eyes and tried to listen. An image swelled behind his lids. Benjen Stark standing in swirling snow, torch guttering, speaking without voice. The wall holds only as long as men hold. Another figure emerged. Eddard Stark, chains around wrists, but eyes calm, saying, "Lead with honor, always." Their faces blurred, overlapped. The living plea of two calls to duty. He felt the pull of each like ice and fire, like two direwolves tugging opposite ends of a sinew until sinew snapped. When he opened his eyes, Ghost stood across the brook, ears pricked. On the far bank, Grey Wind watched, silent, tail low, eyes solemn. Jon knew then that Robb had followed at a distance, trusting the wolves to speak. Indeed, a figure stepped from tree shadows. Robb, cloaked, sword unbelted, gaze reflecting moonlight. "I couldn't sleep," Robb said quietly. "Thought to walk." He looked not at Jon but at the water dancing over rocks. "You once said brotherhood is more than blood." Jon nodded. "As vows are more than words." Robb towed a pebble into the stream. "If father were free, he'd tell you to ride north, clear as day. He'd guard my back while you guarded the realm. That's what tears me." Silence stretched, filled only by bubbling water. At last Robb sighed. "Then I must free father soon, before the choice kills you." He met Jon's eyes, blue steel bright. "Tomorrow we finish terms with the Crag, break west along the coast, outmaneuver Tywin, and drive on King's Landing before autumn. If that fails, we barter Jaime Lannister for father's life." Faint grim smile. "War offers many doors. We need only pick one that opens." Jon studied him, this brother grown into lordship so swiftly, wearing command like tempered bronze. "I'll ride with you until father is safe," he said, finding conviction shape itself like iron inside chest. "After, if war drags on, I'll take riders north. The wall must not break." Robb extended his forearm. Jon grasped it, warm skin binding cold. Wolves on opposite banks mirrored the gesture, Ghost touching Grey Wind's muzzle. Jon felt the moment carve itself into memory. Two brothers choosing each other, yet carving a path to honor both duties. They returned to camp wordless. Dawn crept pale and sour behind clouds. Siege horns blew. Westerling envoys accepted Robb's final demands. The gates opened by midday. Bread wagons rolled into Stark trenches, and hostages rode out under direwolf banners. Among them, a girl of perhaps 16, Jane Westerling, watched the army with wide, frightened eyes. Jon noted how Robb dismounted to speak gentle reassurance, how the girl's trembling eased at his calm voice. Seeds of destiny sometimes took root in rain-drenched ground when least expected. Within the Crag's vaults they found stores of barley and salted beef, enough to sustain a campaign for months. But ravens perched in ruined watchtowers bore darker gifts. A sealed letter stamped with the wax sigil of the Iron Throne. Robb slit the seal before the assembled captains. The parchment's words cracked like ice across heart. Eddard Stark executed at Baelor's September for treason. The hall erupted, swords drawn, curses hurled. Jon felt the world tilt, sound rushing out like wind from lungs. He staggered against a pillar, vision narrowing. Ned's face, calm, stern, gentle, flashed, then wavered, then was gone. Robb's howl silenced the clamor, pure and raw. Grey Wind echoed, a savage dirge. Robb crumpled to knees, letter in fist. Jon crossed the hall in 3 strides and folded to embrace him. No words held meaning. Around them, Northern lords lowered heads, eyes glistening with grief and rage intertwined. Jon heard only Robb's ragged breaths, felt hot tears soak the mail at his shoulder. Hours later, when torches cast trembling shadows across the crag's ancient stones, Jon stood beside Robb before the assembled host. Rain pattered high windows like tears on stone. Robb's voice emerged hollow yet unwavering. "They have murdered my father. They have stolen from the North its honor." The crowd's answering roar shook rafters. "We will not rest until the Red Keep lies bared and cold. We march at once." Jon raised Longclaw, the pale blade reflecting firelight. Thousands of swords followed. Yet beneath the fury Jon felt a new resolve coil, sharper than grief. He would see this through, free his sisters, watch justice fall like winter hail. And afterward, when Ned lay at peace and Lannister banners burned, he would ride north, yes. For now the South demanded a wolf's vengeance. That night he slept little, grief cycling like tide. Ghost pressed close, offering silent solidarity. Somewhere in the keep's depths, a lone direwolf howl answered. Perhaps Nymeria far distant, or only a wounded heart imagining kin. Dawn would come, swords would be sharpened, roads would bleed. But beyond the darkness of vengeance, Jon glimpsed a glimmer, an understanding Ned had once tried to teach, that every choice, every oath tugged unseen threads. If he could hold to honor amidst whirlwinds, perhaps those threads might one day weave a realm worth guarding. When gray light seeped through slit windows, Jon buckled sword and strode to the courtyard where horses stamped and men tightened girths. Robb awaited in armor newly burnished, grief etched into grim dedication. Jon mounted, ghost trotting at flank. Trumpets called, gates groaned open. The host of the North spilled forth like winter waters, bound for King's Landing, bound for vengeance, bound for fates unknown. Jon Snow glanced once northward, toward lands of towering ice he had forsaken, then faced the sunrise where swords would blaze. Two roads still lay before him, duty to blood and duty to realm, but for this moment they merged into a single relentless march, the beat of hoof and heart alike. The North remembers, and he would make the world remember as well. The hoofbeats of 30,000 Northerners rolled southward like distant thunder, shaking field and forest, waking every crow upon the Crownland's crumbling walls. Robb Stark's banners, direwolf gray upon white streamed in gusts that smelled of salt and summer grass, yet under every flap and rattle Jon Snow tasted winter still, thick as iron on the back of his tongue. He rode in the outrider's van, ghost pacing at his stallion's right shoulder, a pale shadow that drifted in and out of the swirling road dust. Ahead lay King's Landing, spire-crowned, gold-armored, and blood-guilty. Behind lay all they had lost. Riverrun's burned fields, Winterfell's ancient stones, Lord Eddard Stark's severed honor. The distance between those two truths narrowed with each mile, yet Jon felt no closer to understanding what would be left of him once vengeance was gone and duty returned. 3 days past the Crag, the Wolfshed host reached the hills of the Blackwater Rush, low rises scored by half-dry streambeds. The land here showed Tywin Lannister's passing. Tumbled hovels, scorched orchards, oak groves felled so hurriedly that great stumps bled sap in the sun. Robb ordered his vanguard to spread wide, driving any straggling lion banners eastward toward the narrowing river. Jon's outriders fanned along the ridge lines, bows strung, blades oiled, watching for columns of smoke that might mark ambush fires. He found the crisp discipline of scouting eased the churn in his chest. Each league he mapped, each game trail he memorized, laid a thin pattern of sense atop the chaos of war, like stitches holding skin over broken bone. On the second dusk within the Crownlands, a blood-red sky flared behind them, and horns called assembly upon a windswept hill of broom and ragwort. Jon spurred up the incline with the other captains. There, beneath a hastily pitched awning, Catelyn Stark waited beside her brother Edmure, returned from Storm's End under truce banners. Dust dulled the green silk of her cloak. Sleeplessness shadowed her blue eyes, yet when she met Jon's gaze he glimpsed a flinty purpose that had sharpened in Ned's absence. "Lannister riders," she said, had crossed the Blackwater 2 days prior bearing some secret cargo toward King's Landing. Ser Bryndon's scouts believed the wagons carried wildfire casks, old Ares's dragonfire, requisitioned from the Alchemists' Guild. Rumor whispered that Queen Cersei herself sought to flood the city's river approach with green flame should wolves and Baratheons lay siege together. Robb's temper flashed bright, then cooled to tempered steel. He dispatched Jon and Meage Mormont with 500 light horse to harry those wagons, a race against time and treachery. They rode through moonless dark, navigating by star gleam on river water and the soft shush of reeds brushing stirrup. Twice they skirted sleeping lion camps, ghosting past cook fires banked beneath soup kettles. Dawn found them crouched among willow scrub, watching a train of 6 wagons grind along the south bank, each cart swathed in damp canvas, flanked by torchbearers who walked with guarded care. The air smelled of rotten eggs and copper, a faint alchemy stink Jon had once sniffed in old Maester Luwin's cellar bottles. Meage's bare sigil gauntlet tightened around her axe haft. "We must strike swift," she muttered. Jon nodded, already gauging the river shallows. They divided their riders. Half would sweep across a ford upstream, circling to cut retreat. Jon would lead the downhill charge straight at the lead wagon, aiming to sever the column before fear unstrung the lion escort. He drew long claw, the pale blade humming in morning hush, and signaled Ghost forward. The dire wolf melted into reeds. Meage's hunting horn sounded, a deep bear roar, and hoofs thundered downriver. Jon kicked his mount to full gallop, cloak snapping. Ahead, Lannister outriders wheeled in alarm. A horn squealed short, strangled by sudden arrow rains from Mormont archers. Jon's charge slammed into the vanguard shield wall, iron ringing like hammered bells. He parried a spear thrust, split a helm with downward stroke, then vaulted from saddle onto a wagon tongue. Canvas flapped away, revealing barrels banded in bronze and sealed with obsidian wax. The alchemist insignia glimmered, flaming skull. Arrows clattered against the barrel's curve. A mis-aimed torch skittered across mud, hissing out inches from disaster. Jon roared for buckets, water skins, anything, and the Northmen hurled saddle flasks to drown errant flames. Ghost erupted onto the wagon, crimson eyes wild, fangs tearing the leg of a torchman before he could rise. Another Lannister lunged with dirk. Jon met him point blank, disarming with pommel smash. Within heartbeats, the first 2 wagons lay in northern hands, while Meage's riders crashed into the rear, axes hacking harnesses, sending terrified draft horses bolting across the shallows. The battle ended in under an hour, but its echoes throbbed all forenoon. They buried their own dead. For Northmen and one of Meage's daughters, Lyra arrow through lung, and set the captured wildfire afloat on a barge of damp reeds, towing it upriver to Robb's main host. Jon rode silent beside the beer cart, Lyra's limp braid trailing over the edge like frayed rope. He thought of the green flame alive inside those barrels, hungry for spark. The same hunger he felt burning behind his ribs each time memory of Ned's fall returned. Grief, like wildfire, cared nothing for intent. It devoured friend and foe alike when loosed. Robb met them at a riverside meadow ringed by alder trees. His mail still bore soot from morning drills, but his eyes brightened at the sight of intact casks. "The lions would have filled the Blackwater with dragonfire," he said, voice low. "You may have saved half the realm." He laid a calloused hand on Jon's shoulder. They spoke then of honor debts and funeral pyres, and that night the camp gathered to witness Lyra Mormont's burning. Meage sang a rough island dirge that tugged tears even from Karstark greybears. Jon stood watch beside the pyre until the last ember drifted skyward. Prince Joffrey's spymasters could not ignore a wolf host this large. Scouts soon reported Lannister battlements hardening along the King's Road. New ditches, sharpened stakes, villages stripped for stone to shore up King's Landing's rotten walls. Yet the Crown's reach stretched thin. Gold cloaks ill-trained, sellswords unpaid, small folk restless. Even rumor of Stannis' fleet loomed like thunder off Dragonstone, promising a storm from seaward to mirror the wolves on land. Robb split his forces. Lord Rickard Karstark led one arm around the god's eye to hammer Harrenhal's southern gate. denying Tywin a fortress fallback. Great John Umber and Meage Mormont rode west to raid Lannister supply trains streaming from Casterly Rock. The main host, 18,000 strong, advanced down the King's Road, banners snapping beneath oppressive heat. Jon remained with the main thrust, drilling outriders daily in quick-strike feints designed to lure the city's garrison into rash sallies. Sweat merged with dust across his brow, turning mail shirt to grinding sandpaper. Nights he dreamt of snow that never melted, of ravens screaming in darkness, of a wall of ice cracking to reveal a pale blue eye staring straight through him. On a scorch-bright afternoon when air shimmered above broken paving, outrider scouts returned breathless. A column of gold cloaks, 2,000 foot for 100 horse, had marched from the city under Ser Boros Blunt, tasked to seize grain wagons stored in a riverside granary south of Sow's Horn. Robb called immediate council beneath a lonely oak. Jon advised a feigned withdrawal up the road bend, leaving wagon prints in dust as bait. When the gold cloaks gave chase, Robb's spearmen would pivot from hidden gullies, pinning them in a V against the river shallows while Jon's horse archers peppered their rear. The plan unfolded like patterned cloth. Gold cloaks, their wool surcoats baking beneath brass discs, spilled after the wagons with triumphant whoops. Moments later they broke upon concealed pikes, their advance collapsing in uproar of startled screams. Jon's archers loosed from tight wedge formation, shafts thudding into exposed backs. Ghost darted through the melee, hamstringing stragglers. Within half an hour, the gold cloak column lay in disarray, hundreds dead or drowning as they tried to ford the rush. Ser Boros, his panther plumes sodden, fell to Robb's mace, captured alive but sputtering curses until gagged. That victory sent shockwaves rippling into King's Landing. Spies claimed Queen Cersei called half the Red Keep's household guard into the throne room to denounce cowardice. Lord Tyrion, returned to serve his hand, was said to have muttered that lions who roar loudest often hide the bendiest knees. Whether truth or tavern tale, the effect was clear. Traffic into the city swelled with refugees, yet few dared ride out. The capital began to starve itself. Robb encamped at 7 Streams, a clutch of fishing huts where the tumblestone fed the Blackwater. Here he convened his war council by lantern glow. Edmure urged immediate assault. Drive rams at the mud gate, fire trebuchet stones over the walls, strike while panic reigned. Brynden Blackfish cautioned patience, reminding them of wildfire caches hidden in sewer tunnels. Cailin returned from Renly's camp with dire news. The younger Baratheon king was dead, slain by shadow sorcery whisperers blamed on Stannis. Renly's bannermen now kneeled to Highgarden's Lady Margaery and her cunning grandmother Olenna, wavering on whether to join Stannis or the Iron Throne. The realm cracked like dry clay. One wrong hammer blow and the wolf host might plunge through fissures into ruin. Jon listened, weighing each argument. In father's absence, he felt the weight of Ned's lessons more keenly. Victory mattered little if honor rotted in its shadow. At last he spoke, voice steady. Storm the walls and we may win the city, but how many fires will green flames set beneath us? What good is a throne of ashes? Strip their grain, harry their fields, cut each road until the people behind those walls see the wolves as deliverance, not doom. Let the queen choke on her own cruelty. Silence answered, thoughtful, taut. Robb's eyes held a spark of fierce pride. Well said. He turned to his captains. We starve them first. For 2 weeks the wolves bled the crownlands rather than the city. Jon's outriders raided storehouses, but always left small folk enough seed to survive. They nailed proclamations to burned barns promising fair northern justice once the lion fell. Gold cloaks sent sally parties that found only deserted fields. Each night ghost fires flickered along the Blackwater, torches of deserters slipping out to swear to the dire wolf banner. Cersei replied by hanging traitors' heads along the city wall, but hunger gnawed faster than fear. During this slow siege, a raven arrived from Castle Black. Maester Aemon's thin spidery script begged any Stark blood to remember the north. Dead roam the Frostfangs. Wildling tribes flee south in terror. We are few. Jon read the letter thrice beneath hooded lantern, his heart clanging. Every mile of snow between King's camps and that frozen wall stretched across his ribcage like rack bonds. Yet he held to his promise. Father first, wall after. Only vengeance remained to lift Ned's ghost. On the third week, a storm front rolled in from the Sunset Sea, clouds tattered by hot coastal winds, thunder growling low. Just before dusk, Jon's scouts reported movement near the Mud Gate. A line of ox-drawn wagons bearing the sigil of House Heatherspoon, a minor reach house loyal to Marjorie. They claimed to haul barley into the city, escorted by Sellsword shields. Jon rode closer through high barley stalks, spying men in ill-fitting surcoats sweating under the storm's breath. Something in their posture smelled false. Too rigid, eyes darting. He scented trap. Under Robb's authority, he led a small strike force to intercept. They surrounded the wagons at a crossroads where a toppled cobbler's god shrine lay broken. When Jon demanded inspection, a supposed merchant bravely refused, hand trembling on sword hilt. Jon nodded once, and Ghost leapt onto the first wagon bed. The direwolf's weight collapsed a false wooden floor, revealing bronze casks of wildfire packed in straw. As if roused by thunder, one barrel shifted, lid loose. Jon's shout came half a heartbeat before flame. The alchemist's substance erupted, a gout of emerald fury blossoming skyward. Heat smashed him backwards. His cloak ignited. He rolled, smothering sparks. Men screamed as green fire sprayed like liquid dragon breath, clinging to flesh. Jon grabbed a fallen shield, beat out burning straw. A second cask cracked, the sound like shattering bones. Meage Mormont's nephew Harwood tackled it off the wagon, rolling it into a ditch where it exploded halfway down. Shards of bronze scythed hedges, slicing a horse's throat. Rain began, fat storm drops sizzling on green flames but not dousing them. In the end, half Jon's force died. The others pulled back with scorched flesh. Yet catastrophe averted, for the wagons never reached the city. Robb rode in through slashing rain to witness the smoldering crossroads. He found Jon kneeling amid smoking ruins, Ghost's fur tinged green, his own brow singed. Robb hauled him to feet, clasping arm. "You keep saving the realm one barrel at a time," he said, grim smile thin. That night lightning tore the sky. Thunderbolts boomed over Blackwater Bay. In Robb's command tent, soaked banners dripping, the council resolved. The wildfire threat made any protracted siege deadly. They must breach before Cersei unleashed full stores. Tyrion's cunning mind would surely devise river traps. Brynden proposed a night assault upriver at the Kingswood Ferry crossing, scaling the lesser-guarded hillside wall. Robb nodded but tasked Jon to lead the diversion. A feint toward the Lion Gate with flaming siege towers to draw the defenders. Jon accepted, though unease prickled. Diversions often meant highest risk with little glory. The eve of battle, Jon walked the camp lines, exchanging quiet words, steadying hands that clenched too hard on pike shafts. He found Theon Greyjoy sharpening a recurved Myrish bow near the picket fires, humming Reaver tunes. Theon favored him a crooked grin. "Tomorrow we climb these walls, piss on the Iron Throne, aye? Tomorrow we bleed," Jon answered. "Where will your piss be then?" The grin faded. "On their dead," Theon muttered, returning to Whetstone. Jon left him and paused outside Robb's tent. Within, the young king sat alone before a travel desk, quill idle, parchment blank. He looked up, eyes bloodshot. "I cannot find words for our dead," he whispered. "They ride beside us anyway," Jon replied. "Words are wind tonight." Robb stood, gripping Jon's forearm. "If I fall tomorrow, you won't. But if I do, carry the North home. Free our sisters." He pressed a folded parchment into Jon's gauntlet. "My last will." Jon slid it inside his breastplate, the paper warm from Robb's hand. "And if I fall?" Robb's smile flickered like candlelight. "Then the whole realm has fallen." They embraced, each feeling the other's mail bite bone, then parted without another word. The night assault began beneath new moon blackness. Rain had ceased, leaving the world steaming, storm-washed. Jon's diversion columns rolled siege towers of green-washed oak toward the Lion Gate, torches hooded. Inside each tower crouched archers with straw-packed jugs of lamp oil, ready to hurl chaos upon crenellations. Ahead, Ghost flitted white between rubble piles, sentinel to trip alarms. As midnight tolled from Baelor's sept bell, Jon signaled. Fires bloomed along the tower flanks, flames licking upward. Trumpets cracked the hush, 3 notes wolf, 1 note bear. Siege drums thundered. Jon's men pushed towers across muddy no-man's land while shield lines advanced under arrow hail. Sparks whirled into starless void. Jon rode just behind first shield wall, sword lifted, shouting orders drowned beneath clash. Upon the wall, gold cloaks scrambled, hurling stones, boiling pitch. A pot smashed atop leftmost tower, flame cascading. Yet Jon's center tower reached the moat plank. Grapnels flew. Under shriek of pulleys, the tower's drawbridge slammed onto battlements. Northern arrows raked defenders, cutting them down. Jon's spearmen surged across, locking shields. He climbed after, Ghost bounding ahead. Close-quartered carnage exploded. Iron against iron, screams ripped raw. Every heartbeat a lifetime. Jon blocked a mace, riposted through chain links. Felt his shoulder jolt as a bolt glanced cuirass. Ghost took a guard's throat, ripping crimson arcs across pale stone. Jon glimpsed green wildfire pot launch from inner parapet, heard Miege's war cry as she deflected with shield to send it falling harmless outside. The stink of pitch and blood thickened until lungs burned. Then distant horns, 2 short, 1 long, Robb's signal of breach at the Kingswood Ferry. The feint had worked. Jon's duty now, press but not die. He rallied men, pushing to outer stair turret, holding while others set fire to gatehouse stores of tar. Smoke poured. Beneath their feet, the Lion Gate portcullis shrieked upward, ordered by panicked captains desperate to recall troops from the yard. Northmen slipped down kill stair, flung torches into pitch-laced cordwood stacked beside. Green and red flames blossomed. The defensive gatehouse became furnace. Jon's ears rang with roar of flame and clash. He shouted withdrawal. They needed to quit before wildfire stores ruptured. But a fresh wave of gold cloaks, led by Ser Maren Trant in battered gilded helm, stormed the court to cut off retreat. Jon ducked a halberd sweep, drove Longclaw through chain ribs.
C'est main trust, nicking Jon's gourgette.
Ghost barreled in, teeth clamping greave. Jon hammered pommel to visor. Iron buckled. The night fell. Behind, thunderous crack. Wildfire barrel splitting somewhere. Blue-green flare surged along parapet. Heat struck like furnace door. Jon bellowed for exit. They forced through side tower, bursting onto catwalk overlooking moat. Ladders awaited, fixed by retreat squad. One by one, they clambered down as green flame rolled overhead. Jon descended last, Ghost scrambling along climbing rope. When Jon's boots hit mud, he slashed ladder ropes free. The flaming tower above groaned, collapsing inward in eruption of sparks. Night sky glowed toxic emerald, reflecting in Blackwater's churn. Jon staggered clear, lungs seared. Northmen regrouped beyond arrow range. Count revealed 2 score lost, thrice that wounded, but diversion held. Signals flashed from ferry wall. Robb's banner atop inner barbican. The direwolf roamed inside the city at last. Yet dawn did not bring triumph. Queen Cersei, fearing sack, fled with Joffrey to the Red Keep's Maegor's holdfast, locking gates of thick Valyrian steel crossbars. The city's outer walls belonged to wolves. The hill of Aegon's high hill still bristled with scorpions and pyromancer cells. The battle for King's Landing only begun, siege reversed inward. Robb summoned Jon before the Justman Gate Keep Tower, newly secured. The young king looked haggard, soot-smeared, eyes rimmed red but standing. "Your diversion saved my flank," he said. "We hold half the city, but wildfire pockets burn through Flea Bottom. Civilians trapped." He rubbed brow. "We need order, not slaughter." Jon offered solution. Send Great Jon Umber to douse fires with river water bucket lines while Jon led outriders to patrol alleyways, protecting small folk and rounding stragglers who tried loot. Robb agreed. Thus began 3 days of street fighting more vicious than any open battle. Dagger duels in tight stairwells, ambushes from rooftops, potshots with crossbows fashioned from shutter wood. Jon moved like ghost at his flan. Longclaw crimson-flecked. He saved a baker's family cornered by Sellswords, buried 3 arrowheads from his calf without flinch, slept 2 hours across 3 nights. Rumor of a white wolf grew among commoners. Mothers whispered blessings, begging wolves to save children. Throughout the chaos, ravens kept arriving from the wall. Pleas more desperate each scroll. Reports of dead things rising in the Frostfangs multiplied. The old bear marched arranging beyond the Shadow Tower. Jon read those words beneath torch gloom atop a rubble heap and knew the hour of choosing neared. The direwolf banners might soon fly over the Red Keep, yet winter's true face clawed north. On the 4th dawn, the Red Keep's gates opened under parley flag. Tyrion Lannister, scarred and limping from wild night skirmish near the mud gate, strode out beneath blank stares of gold cloaks whose loyalty shifted like sand. He demanded audience with King Robb, offering gold and Joffrey's crown in exchange for safe passage of the royal family to Casterly Rock. Robb considered, gray eyes shuddered. But before council convened, small folk riots burst along Pig Run Alley, torching storehouses where gold cloaks hoarded grain. The city teetered on edge. Caitlin counseled mercy. Accept ransom, spare lives. The Great Jon roared rage. No peace until Lannister blood paid Ned's cost. Jon found himself mediator again, urging that the North's honor lay in justice, not children's corpses. He proposed terms. Surrender the Queen and Joffrey to stand trial before Northern lords. Small folk pardoned. Wildfire stocks ceded to maesters for disposal. The Iron Throne vacant until Great Council of the Realm. Tyrion pale-faced, but agreed to convey terms under flag. That night Jon climbed Aegon's Hill to warily inspect the Red Keep from shadows. He stood before the scorched gates of Maegor's Holdfast, flanked by silent rows of dead gold cloaks strung as deterrent by their own commander. The moon bathed the fortress in ghostlight. Ghost padded ahead, pausing by blackened corpses. Jon's breath plumed silver. Exhaustion wove illusions. He thought he glimpsed a direwolf carved upon the distant wall, but no, merely scorched stone. Soon perhaps that sigil would stand truthfully here. Yet what then? Would vengeance sate the emptiness? Footsteps behind. Jon turned, hand on hilt. Robb approached alone, helm under arm. They faced the Red Keep's shadow in silence until Robb spoke. I will accept your terms. Tyrion swears the wildfire is gone if we surrender safe conduct. The realm needs peace. And the wall needs watchmen, Jon murmured. Robb's nod held grief and acceptance both. When dawn seals treaty, ride north. Take whomever will go. Find my uncle Benjen, or his truth. He swallowed. Leave me father's sword. I will carry it in justice's name. Jon drew Longclaw halfway, moon catching rippled steel. This is mine now, he said softly. But I shall bear Ned's honor north in other ways. Robb's fingers brushed Wolfhead pommel, then dropped. Fair. He clasped Jon's forearm. Carry my love to Winterfell. To Winterfell, Jon echoed, voice thick. They parted there in moonlight, one bound for crown, one for ice. Treaty ink dried by sunrise. Lannister litters departed city under northern guard. Queen veiled, boy king sullen. Cersei spat vows of wrath. Tyrion offered wry gratitude. Yet as gates closed behind them, a hush settled on King's Landing, broken only by caw of carrion crows. Robb climbed the steps of the ruined throne room, but he did not sit the Iron Throne. Instead he sheathed sword, turning to lords assembled. The realm will choose its king in council, he proclaimed, voice echoing against melted stone swords. For now, I safeguard this chair for whoever has right and wisdom to wield it. Applause thundered. In that moment Jon felt pride flare, then ebb into horizon-pulling ache. His road turned northward. 2 nights later, under starlit hush, Jon rode from the city with 500 volunteers. Northerners, Riverlanders, even 2 men from the Stormlands who claimed old ties to the Watch. Ghost trotted ahead, paws silent on cracked cobbles. Jon did not look back at the Red Keep's silhouette against dawn's bruise. He looked north, always north. Beyond the King's Road gate, fields lay littered with green-blossomed craters, but new shoots of grass already pushed through ash. Jon inhaled, tasting promise between smoke wisps. The wall called like drumbeat in his blood. Behind, a chapter closed. Ahead, snow and shadow awaited. He tightened reins, settled in saddle, and whispered to Ghost, "Home, then." The dire wolf looked up, red eyes reflecting first light, and bounded forward. Jon followed, the thunder of hooves fading southward behind him, and the chill breath of the north sweeping to meet him like an old friend.